All right, let's get into the agenda. And the top of it is the events of Twilight on Saturday, which pitched the young and hungry against the weary champs. And it was a no contest. Hawthorn had their way with Collingwood, and in doing so, they plunged the Premiers to near oblivion.
So I had a really good chat with Nick Dacos there at the end of the game, and he just couldn't believe how we did it consistently in 13, 14, 15. He's like, you're the hunted. It's tough. Being the hunted is hard. We found it difficult at times. A couple of our years where you start 4-4 and you really start to second-guess yourself and the brand of footy you're playing.
It's amazing how quickly fortunes can change in footy.
Been a bit embarrassing. This is a Collingwood defence that have just turned it up and said, oh, we'll play on our terms.
An ugly sight if you're a Collingwood fan.
This is a nightmare for Collingwood fans, getting worse and worse by the minute.
Craig, where do you feel it went wrong tonight?
Oh, many areas. Many areas today, many areas. You know, that was pretty ugly at times, and we're not going to enjoy watching some of that back because that's not who we want to be. You know, we lost today, and we're right on the edge of being losers. You can lose and still be winners, and we're right on the edge.
He's never lost 4 games in a row, Craig McRae, as coach. That's what he's staring down right now.
They just haven't looked anywhere near organised or committed enough.
Why would it not be the end of it, Gerard?
Because we're still breathing here. Nothing's finished here. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, get on with it. You know, fall off the bike, get up, go again. We're falling over today, but we'll pick ourselves up, and ideally someone's there to pick us up.
Four weeks ago, you were fearful of this. You thought you recognised the signs. It's 4 straight losses, and they look like they've lost their trademark, they've lost their will, they've lost their want, and they've lost their way.
It's tough, and I think there's only a few people that can talk through that through experience. And I've said this story before. We learned a really good lesson after 2008. Now, we were less experienced and a little bit younger than what this Collingwood side is right now, but you nearly have to suffer the embarrassment of the next season. We saw it with Geelong, we saw it with the start of the season with Brisbane, to then really check in on yourself. And the lessons that we learned as a football club was, I still remember after 2013 we win the premiership, and I've said this before, there were 2 cabinets, and I was taken aback by it. There was one with the Premiership Cup that we just won, and there was another one that said 365 days to go. If you want to go back to back, if you want to be a genuine contender every single year, that is the mentality that you need to have. Every moment counts. Yes, you enjoy the grand final, and yes, you can celebrate accordingly, but I would think that Collingwood, reflecting on how they handled that period, it's tough. It's really tough because they hadn't been there before or for a while. So there would have been decisions that they would probably like to change, because it does impact the way you act in pre-season. It does impact the continuity that you get. Now, we're seeing players who are banged up at the moment. What was that due to the decisions that they made post-grand final?
So decisions made out of satisfaction?
And you can absolutely agree. I could have sat in front of the Collingwood Football Club and told our story, but you've got to feel it, you've got to live it to understand what someone would be talking about. Now, they will need to reflect, and you're right, this season is slipping away. They've got arguably the hardest run home the last 4 games. But it is so tough to maintain that rage and to maintain that edge. Now, they're going right through it at the moment. And as Craig McRae said, time is running out, but you don't know how tough it is until you're in that position.
So every fight looks like one too many at the moment.
Yep.
Once the heavy artillery is unloaded, you could tell in the opening minutes of that game that Hawthorn were going to play with excitement and vigour and ferocity, and all Collingwood was trying to do was withstand it. And after a little while, you're going, you can't withstand this for 120 minutes and prevail out the other side, so you'll absorb what you can, and they were nowhere near it.
No, so you just need to see signs. The Collingwood football side needed to see signs. Now, anyone who watched that game and went to that game early weren't seeing those signs. They were seeing them for Hawthorn, and you feed off that as a player. So when you haven't been playing well for the past month, and then you're not feeling it straight away in game, then you then this doubt starts to creep in again. So I was really surprised by the way that Hawthorn played in the wet, which is another conversation. But certainly, it just seems like at the moment everything is a little bit harder than what they would have imagined.
So I think there's a modern study in the sheer exhaustion of the premiership campaign and of achieving, and you can look back and search for little clues along the way, but even Darcy Moore, preliminary final night in the doco that was made.
Such a grind. That was so hard. And there's so many people that are so pumped, and it's just can be so overwhelming. Especially when you literally for 2 hours can't even enjoy it because you're just so stressed.
The great sides are only the great sides.
It's not enjoyable. From the outside, and from the stands and from the support, it is one of the most enjoyable experiences you could possibly have if your team is in the grand final and lucky enough to win the grand final. As a player, there is nothing enjoyable about it at all because of exactly what Darcy Moore said. It's hard, it's stressful. You've got to front up every single week. There's stuff that's going against you. There's teams that want to beat you. Hawthorn now have games that matter. Luke Bruce has said that on radio. Games that matter. They haven't had them in the past. So all these things start to close in on you. And you're no longer the darling. Everyone wants to beat you now. So that's a really difficult position to be in.
The Hawthorn side of things. So there was a moment when stakes and ladders was going to turn in their favour if you just keep chipping away. So 13th for a long time, whilst winning, and they got their bump here. And I wonder if the bump becomes a steep rise. So Geelong pay their heavy price, so too Essendon, and Melbourne's return to the 8 was ever so brief. Brisbane just week on week climbing, Freo back in the top 4. The Giants look to spike, Port Adelaide go back in for the moment. The Dogs haven't been closer for ages. Hawthorn in 11th. So they test the imagination like no other team. Maybe we'll play with the central figure of Jack Ginnivan first. So the pantomime was rich, about as good as sport gets on that front, but his influence on the game was just so profound as he played his best yet.
Yeah, I don't know, Jack. I watch him play, and he certainly plays with his heart on his sleeve. Anyone you talk to or listen to from Hawthorn rave about his football IQ. Now, we saw that at Collingwood as well, but he seems to thrive in an environment where he's allowed to go out and play. And I don't think Sam would let that happen if he didn't realise that he did have a high football IQ. If he needed structure or he needed guidance along the way, you only let those players roam if you know that they know what they're doing. Now, there was an instance where he kicks a goal, then he walks back to the goal square and does the sleeping side to the crowd. And I look at that and I go, is that what you want to see in a Hawthorn player? But then you talk to people and you understand that the game had been back and forth with the Collingwood cheer squad and the Collingwood fans absolutely giving it to Jack Ginnivan. So I don't mind it. I like it. I like the cheekiness of it. I like the confidence to be able to give back in the form of an action to the argument that's happening on field. So they're doing it differently. I cannot remember a side that has brought this much energy and this much showbiz to the game, and it's good when they're winning because you can get away with it. But you know that there will always be the challenge. But right now, I think you've just got to embrace what they're doing.
This is not a short burst. This is now 9 of 11. So this is a sustained level of excellence that is getting better all the time. It is amongst the best footy being played in the competition. They are coming from a mile back. These sorts of runs are only ever recognised and hailed in hindsight. But do you have the imagination for it?
Yeah.
What I will say, the finals will be poorer if they don't make it.
Yeah.
You want a team like this to make a run at it.
And the thing that the opposite to that, if Sam was controlling and not allowing them to express themselves, they probably they wouldn't have that win-loss record right now. So they are, I think, the most watchable team in the competition. You know, if you agree with that, their run home is still pretty tough. You cannot relax on the games that they've got to come, starting with Adelaide in Adelaide.
What about a Hawthorn team, so your old club, coached by Sam Mitchell, being so exuberant? Would you have imagined so? Would you have imagined this was the player that you grew up with going into coaching? This is the characteristics?
Absolutely not. No, I said probably privately when Sam got this job, they said, what's his greatest challenge? His greatest challenge would be to connect with the group emotionally and to understand that hard edge and when to let them explore their personalities. And he's just got the right balance. So certainly in our day and you know, back when Sam was playing, no way we would have been allowed to do that. But to his credit, he understands and he's highly intelligent emotionally to let these players behave in the way that they do. So it's infectious, and you can't stop that because then the wins probably dry up. So it's a credit to him. I thought it was his greatest challenge, but clearly has the skills to be able to adapt.
Yes, you know, with sort of any kid these days, the practice, the rehearsal of the celebration is as much a part
Well,
as
it's probably got something to do with he's got young kids. It's like coaches have got young kids as well, so he probably sees it at home with you know with his two girls and Smith. So embrace it, Gerard.